Greetings, loyal subjects of the Imperium of Man. I am Librarian Elias of the Adeptus Astartes. I am creating a series of recordings with the intent of educating the general populace of the dangers of the galaxy. All of this information comes from the Lexicanum, provided to me by the Adeptus Mechanicus. I will be reading verbatim from their archives. This recording will cover one of the few allies the Imperium has. Primarch of the 7th Legion, Rogal Dorn. Rogal Dorn, also known as the Praetorian of Terra, was the Primarch of the Imperial Fists Space Marine Legion. He was one of the 20 Primarchs created by the Emperor in the earliest days of the Imperium, just after the end of the Age of Strife. Dorn, just like other Primarchs, was randomly transported across the galaxy by the gods of chaos and placed in a faraway world in an attempt to prevent the coming of the Age of the Imperium. During the Horus Heresy, Rogal Dorn oversaw most of the Loyalist war effort and ultimately orchestrated the defense of the throne world during the Siege of Terra. He was the first known Lord Commander of the Imperium, ultimately ceding the title to Rebute Gilliman, the Chaos Emissary to Lorgar called him the Soldier. Very little is known about Rogal Dorn's youth. It is believed that he was raised on the planet of Inwit in the system by the same name, by an ice-caste native of the ice hives of the world. The patriarch of the clan, the House of Dorn, soon became as a grandfather to him and taught him much of tactics and survival. Even after he discovered he was not blood related to his grandfather, Dorn held his memory in high value, such as keeping a fur-edged robe that had belonged to the man and slept with it on his bed every night. Eventually, Rogal Dorn became the leader not only of his caste, but of the whole world, and then the surrounding region of space, ruling the Inwit cluster as Emperor of the House of Dorn. Intrigued by the enormous station, known as the Phalanx orbiting Inwit, Dorn spent many years reactivating the vessel. 40 years after his grandfather's death, the Great Crusade reached the ice hives of Inwit. Dorn greeted the Emperor at the helm of his enormous Phalanx, as the 7th Primarch to be found. The Emperor welcomed Dorn and returned the Phalanx to his care, making it the fortress monastery of the Imperial Fists. Commonly dressed in armor of burnished copper and gold, Dorn also wore a red velvet cloak and unfurled eagle wing motif. It was heavily present on most parts of his gear, most notably on a decorative section of his armor that rose above his shoulders. He had a stern and naturally unsmiling face, topped with an unruly stalk of short-boned white hair. During the Great Crusade, Dorn himself was fiercely loyal to the Emperor and never once sought any favor from him. He exemplified the truth and could never tell a lie, even if it would have aided his cause. Because of this, Dorn's statue stands as one of 4 on the crag, next to that of Rebute Gilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines. Dorn commanded his legion and expeditionary fleets with peerless devotion and military genius. It was said that he possessed perhaps the finest military mind of the Primarchs, as ordered and disciplined as Rebute Gilliman's, and as courageous as Lionel Johnson's, but still inclined to the flashes of zeal and inspiration which marked the successes of Leman Russ and Jagatai Khan. Indeed, the War Master had once said that he esteemed Dorn and the Imperial Fist so highly that he reckoned if the Fists, noted masters of defense, were to hold a fortress against him and his lunar wolves, the resultant conflict would result in a never-ending stalemate. Despite his fierce reputation as a general, Dorn had compassion for civilian populations, as demonstrated during his clash with Kurz in the Trinot War and with Ferrus Manus in the Ashrani campaign. When the Emperor returned to Terra for his own secret work, Dorn went as well. Always having excelled in the construction of fortresses, he was tasked with designing the defenses for the Imperial Palace. These would prove to be magnificent and would be well tested through the following years. Fulgrim once asked if Rogal Dorn thought he could withstand the Iron Warriors Legion, and Dorn's truthful answer infuriated Perturabo to such a degree they would almost destroy each other in battle years later. Later, upon reflection, Dorn considered his overly competitive relationships with Perturabo to have demonstrated personal weaknesses, presumably including the exchange which resulted in Perturabo's outburst. Dorn also clashed with his brother Conrad Kurz for his many atrocities. Having been informed by Fulgrim of Kurz's vision of what would eventually become the Horus Heresy, Dorn kept this secret from his brother until they were on a joint mission on Sherrod. Kurz was so enraged by this revelation that he attacked his brother and slashed his face with his lightning claws. Dorn would have died if not for his endurance as a Primarch. In the aftermath of the Great Crusade, Dorn and the entire Imperial Fist Legion were recalled to Terra to take up guard stations there as the Emperor worked on his new project. Before the Imperial Fists could arrive at Terra in full complement, the events of the Horus Heresy overtook them. Stranded for some considerable time by severe warp storms, the Imperial Fist fleet eventually discovered the badly damaged Death Guard frigate Einstein and learned of Horus's betrayal. At first unwilling to believe it, Rogal was eventually convinced by several members of the Einstein survivors, notably Captain Nathaniel Garrow and Remembrancer Mercedes Oliton, and that his brother, Horus, was staging a full-stage rebellion. Dorn therefore dispatched the bulk of his legion to the Asphalt III system on a war footing. He himself returned to Terra with his veteran companies to bring word of the events personally. Declared Lord Commander of the Imperium until the arrival of Rabute Gilliman, Dorn was subsequently charged with bolstering the defenses of the Imperium Palace even further and oversaw the construction himself. He felt that it was marring the perfection and beauty of the existing structure in doing this, and regretted it, even though it was necessary. As the Emperor was held up with the war within the Webway, Dorn effectively managed the Loyalist war effort, while Malkador the Sigillite handled the political spectrum. Dorn divided the Sol system into several spheres of defense, attempting to contain the traitor advance and the subsequent Solar War. During the Battle of Pluto, Dorn seemingly killed Alfarius, Primarch of the Alpha Legion, but lost his trusted House Skarl's commander, Archimus, in the process. Later, Dorn appeared to greet Vulcan when the Salamander's Primarch emerged from the Webway. Vulcan sensed that Dorn was mentally and physically exhausted from his duty and the constant bad news, and embraced his brother. Dorn next held a war council with Leman Russ, Jagatai Khan, Sanguinius, and Malkador the Sigillite, during which he revealed that the Ruin Storm was weakening, and intended to exploit this by mustering his forces in the Beta Garment system until Gilliman and Lionel Johnson could arrive to crush Horus from the rear. The Khan and Russ both disagreed with Dorn's actions, and Russ left Terra with his legion to confront Horus directly, despite Rogal pleading with him to stay. In 014 M31, Horus finally struck at the Sol system and brought about the final phase of the Solar War. Dorn at this point had conceived a 5-tier defense layer based around buying as much time as possible in order to stall for Gilliman's arrival. Commanding from the Bat Bastion with his primarily human staff during the initial phase of the battle, as Luna and Mars came under direct attack, Dorn finally decided to unleash the Phalanx into the battle and moved aboard the battle station. However, as they were departing Terra's orbit for the battle, Garviel Loken, a loyalist Luna Wolves member, brought the Remembrancer Mercedes Oliton aboard the station with urgent news. Dorn, having been given the initial news of Horus's treachery from Oliton years prior, trusted her judgment when Loken confirmed to him that Oliton had to speak with the Primarch. However, this was a trap by Chaos, and Oliton was revealed to have been unknowingly corrupted by Malakers, a traitor Luna Wolves member, years prior. The demon Samus manifested directly aboard the Phalanx, bringing with him hordes of demonic creatures. Dorn and the Imperial Fist aboard the Phalanx fought a desperate battle, with the Primarch even engaging Samus in direct combat and slaying the creature. However, Samus was continually reborn by possessing the bodies of the fallen, and Dorn was ready to order the self-destruction of the Phalanx until Oliton committed, closing the portal from which the demons manifested. With the Sol system falling around him due to Horus's attacks, Dorn ordered that the Admiral Noira Sukassin take the Phalanx to the outer reaches of the system, while he returned to Terra to command the defenses of the world for Horus's coming attack. During the final battle on Terra's surface, Dorn was charged with the overall command of the defenses of the Imperial Palace, personally commanding the effort from the Bat Bastion and later the Sky Fortress, an orbital station that surrounded Terra. During the early stages of the battle, he attempted to maintain a sense of normalcy by allowing the Council of Terra to meet within the Great Chamber of the Senatorium Imperialis, but in truth he was completely occupied by the traitor's siege. He forbid his brother Primarchs, Sanguinius and Jagatai Khan from leaving the palace walls and planned to instead bleed Horus's forces in a protracted siege to buy time for Rabute Gilliman's expected arrival. However, he later relented on his plan to not allow the deployment of his best troops outside the palace, opening the Helios Gate of the palace and allowing Sanguinius to lead a counterattack by the Blood Angels, Imperial Fists, and Legio Salaria to rescue the Imperial Army conscripts being overrun outside. During the battle for Terra's Lion's Gate spaceport, Dorn put Fafnir Ran, a captain of his legion, in charge of the defenses, but was later forced to send in Sigismund to lead in reinforcements. During this period, Dorn confronted Euphratai Keeler over her proto-imperial cult, but the future saint refused to back down and insisted she would aid the defense of Terra through faith. She desired to send Sigismund on a crusade to slay Abaddon, something which infuriated Dorn. Later, as Sigismund faced death at the hands of Karn and traitors were overrunning the spaceport, Dorn took to the field himself to allow time for the Loyalists to withdraw. He easily bested Karn, swatting away the Chosen of Khorne like an insect. It was then that Perturabo sat down on the field from the Iron Blood, and Dorn attempted to goad the Lord of Iron into a personal duel in order to buy time. However, Perturabo refused to be baited by Dorn's taunts, promising to only slay his brother after Terra's defenses had been subdued. Dorn responded that Perturabo had spent an immense amount of lives to merely take the first wall, and that many more awaited. Despite the fall of the spaceport, Dorn was not distraught, as he held it longer than he expected to, and knew that all that mattered was to hold out until Gilliman's arrival. After the fall of the Lion's Gate, the strategic situation for the Loyalists worsened, and 4 key areas were now threatened: the Colossi Gate, the Saturnine Gate, Gorgon Bar, and Eternity Wall spaceport. However, the Loyalists only had enough resources to defend 3 of these sites. Dorn was thus faced with the difficult decision of abandoning one and its defenders with it, eventually choosing the spaceport. While stopping Cairo's Cindermen from a possible attempt, the Remembrancer's words made Dorn realize that he overlooked a flaw in the Saturnine Gate that Perturabo could possibly exploit. Dorn thus set a trap for the traitors at Saturnine as he prepared to abandon the Eternity Wall spaceport. At the height of the battle for Saturnine, Dorn saved Sigismund from his fallen brother Fulgrim, with the 2 Primarchs coming to battle. With Fulgrim in his human state, Dorn was able to resist his constant goading, match his swordsmanship, and land mortal blows. However, Fulgrim quickly regenerated and laughed off the damage. Dorn then informed Fulgrim of his trap and that Abaddon's subterranean assault had failed. Fulgrim became fed up with his allies and quit the battle, though not before summoning his elite guard led by Eidolon to assassinate the Primarch. With the help of Sigismund, Dorn was able to survive the battle. He next took direct command of the Shard Bastion, along with the Mercury Exalted Kill Zone, organizing defenses against the massive Legio Mortis assault alongside 400 Imperial Fists. 3 months into the siege, Rogal Dorn had not slept or even rested for a single moment. The strain finally caught up with his even superhuman biology, and he began to slow. Admitting the war effort was lost, he nonetheless continued his work and did not oppose when Jagatai Khan launched a counterattack to retake the Lionsgate spaceport. While admiring the Khan's ultimate achievement and seeming sacrifice, he did not think the recapture of the port would change the battle's outcome. With loyalist positions collapsing across the inner palace, Dorn soon found that his own Bab Bastion, under siege by traitor forces that fought alongside Sigismund and Fafnir Ran. Dorn later joined the Emperor and Sanguinius on the assault on the Vengeful Spirit, Horus's flagship. Helping bring back the bodies of the Emperor and Sanguinius back to Terra, he was among those who received the Emperor's final instructions before being interred on the Golden Throne. After the fall of the Emperor, Dorn was stricken with grief. He felt the Emperor's near demise to be his fault, and led his legion on a crusade of penitence across the Imperium. He was summoned back to Terra when Rabute Gilliman announced the adoption of his Codex Astartes, turning his legions into chapters. Dorn was initially outraged at this proposal, feeling that the Imperium blamed him, and rightly so he thought, for for the fall of his brother Marines, but realizing what damage another internal conflict could do to the fragile peace of the Imperium, Dorn agreed. This was a dark period for Rogal Dorn's life. He had failed both the Emperor, and his legion faltered without the guiding light of the Emperor. Some controversy still exists in the next event of Rogal Dorn's life. What it is clear is that the Imperial Fists could not be as easily divided into chapters as, for example, the Ultramarines could. The total commitment to the Legion was bred into each Marine, and many didn't wish to form their own chapters. Dorn found the answer to his problem in meditation through self-inflicted pain, using a device known as the Pain Glove. The pain-induced vision revealed that his legion had to be redeemed in the eyes of the Emperor, and that the only way to salvation was through pain and self-sacrifice. The collective pain needed to cleanse the chapter was decided by Dorn to be an Iron Warrior's fortress, the Iron Cage. Perturabo had built the massive fortifications to mock the Imperial Fists, and Dorn led his most diehard followers on a siege that would last for several weeks. Followers of the Iron Warriors claimed that the Imperial Fists suffered a crushing defeat, and that Dorn and his legion would have been wiped out if Perturabo hadn't prolonged Dorn's suffering so long that the Ultramarines managed to intervene. Imperial records indicate otherwise. The Imperial Fists always had been masters of siegecraft, and even unprepared and at a disadvantage, they fought like lions. Dorn stood as a giant in their midst, his mind clear with purpose after years of doubt and guilt. The Iron Warriors would have had to sacrifice their lives in Primarch to destroy the Imperial Fists, a price they weren't ready to pay. The arrival of the Ultramarines cut the conflict short, and the Iron Warriors fled for the Eye of Terror. The Imperial Fists had suffered staggering losses, but they had proved their loyalty to the Emperor and cleansed themselves of earlier failures. What remained of the Legion was divided into 3 chapters. The most zealous Marines formed the Black Templars, while the more rational and newly recruited Marines, the Crimson Fists, and the ones most devoted to their Primarch and Legion remained the Imperial Fists. Rogal Dorn spent the next 20 years rebuilding and reforming his chapter according to the standards of the Index Astartes. Though there were other chapters, such as the Soul Drinkers, for instance, that were formed, though it is unclear when they came into existence. Rogal Dorn is missing and presumed dead after attacking a Chaos fleet with a vastly outnumbered force. Seeing the importance of attacking the enemy fleet while they were still preparing, he relied on hit-and-run attacks until his reinforcements could arrive. Dorn went missing aboard the Despoiler-class battleship, the Sword of Sacrilege, after leading a desperate attack on its bridge. Only his hand was recovered, which is kept in stasis by his chamber aboard the Phalanx. Dorn's skeletal fist is kept within the shrine, the bones intricately engraved with a heraldry of all the chapter's previous masters. Only the chapter master has the right to engrave his name upon the bones. Each bone corresponds with former commanders. Left hand, the first metacarpal, Lord Bronwyn Abramort, Maximus Thane, Count Manflodensbog, with the first phalanx of the thumb, engraved Ambrosian Spector, etc. Despite being considered dead by the Imperium at large, Dorn's status remains unclear. During the War of the Beast, the rediscovered Primarch Vulcan stated to Cortland, a captain of the Imperial Fists, that he would speak well of the Imperial Fist to Rogal Dorn. According to Conrad Kurz, however, Dorn is dead and was torn to pieces by the enemy. This fate is foreseen by the Night Haunter when the two brothers meet on Ostramo, and it's confirmed many years later when Kurz reflects on his past while waiting to be executed by Imshen. Like the other Primarchs, Dorn wielded a series of wargear that was unique to him. Rogal Dorn's primary weapon was the massive chainsword known as Storm's Teeth, said to have been constructed on Inwent before the coming of the Emperor. For long-range combat, he was equipped with the ornate bolter, Voice of Terra. This firearm was given to him as a gift by the Adeptus Custodes to honor his appointment as Defender of Terra. For protection, Dorn wore a massive suit of power armor, known as the Auric Armor, which was constructed from the same auric adamantium alloy as the Emperor's own armor. After several attempts on his life during the Horus Heresy, Rogal Dorn was often seen being transported in a specialized Thunderhawk known as the Atos Dios, Another device associated with Dorn is the Soul Spear, and of course, later on in his career, Rogal Dorn took up the Pain Glove as an act of atonement. This concludes the information regarding Rogal Dorn. More in-depth information regarding him will be recorded at a later date. This is Librarian Elias.